Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Whales of Wall Street. We have a quick MultiVac MTV video here today. There's been a few requests for some updates on this project and topic. This is a project that I've held for a couple of years now. It's one that I found through Cheeky Crypto when I was watching a lot of their content back then. And I still do, of course, today. But back then, even I think it was like maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, they did a really interesting video about is MTV a scam, this kind of stuff, because of the lack of communication, lack of development, information, all of this weird stuff, right? And it literally became so apparent across the board where people were just like, oh, we're not getting updates. Are these people even real? This, that, and the other. And the last video I did on MultiVac, I can't remember now, it's like 6 to 9 months ago. I reiterated the point that I don't agree at all with the way that they've handled things and the lack of communication, etc. But I do understand like the radio silence in the sense of development or potential development, and that's why a lot of projects went into hiding, because there's not enough, ethos around the development at the time, and it's not where it should be. Even though MultiVac's been around, right, for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years now. 2019, I think the token launched somewhere around there, maybe slightly earlier than that. So it's been around for a bit. Has it made the progress that everyone thought it would? Not really. Has there been like an ecosystem growth? Not particularly. When you compare it to so many other chains, and there's such great promise around MultiVac from the scalability perspective, and that's still possible. It's still on their website, it's still achievable. But as holders, retail investors, we kind of have to take it with a bit of a pinch of salt and go, right, okay, we're looking at the price points in a second in this chart to give you a bit of a reflection around that. But the point being is that there are so many projects out there, guys, so many. And I, as you know, with the videos that we do and other topics that we discuss, even projects we don't even hold ourselves in our portfolio, we're looking at things like in the energy sector, healthcare, finance, trade, etc. These kind of projects are really interesting. They're great opportunities for that scalability perspective and the sharding perspective as well. But I feel like a lot of the bigger chains and chains that have been in existence for a few years now, some even 10 years old, have already advanced that area to not even need or potentially need these extra layers on top. So there's a bit of a question mark around that, but I still see there's a possibility of opportunity within gains price point wise. And in all honesty, the communication hasn't got that much better at all. I think even on the social media side of things, particularly on Twitter, or X now, isn't it? I think it's like 1 a month update from MTV. It's really odd. They supposedly got a growing team or an expanded team, but if you go on LinkedIn, the people that supposedly work there have been there for like 5 years, and they don't have any descriptions about like what they do or anything like that. It's just really odd, and I reiterate what I said in the last video. Is a weird project, but I hold it. I'm at a loss on it, absolutely, like most people are, to be honest. I'm just waiting, because if it does swing back around to those previous all-time highs that we saw in 2021, going up to the 2 cent mark, happy days. Am I accumulating more right now? I will add, for sure, small positions. I mean, the price is not gigantic at this moment in time. At the moment of recording, get the zeros in, 0.0009. Wow. So there's an advantage here in the sense that it's very speculative. In my mind, it's still a risk asset. So again, this is not financial advice saying you should or shouldn't at all. My personal opinion and thoughts is that I hold it from prior, and I'm just keeping it to hope that I get the money back and potentially make profit on the top of that. Happy days if that's the case. But this current price point, you could argue from here to 2 cents is quite a significant jump. And in fact, we'll mention that really quickly before we go on to a couple of the other points about MultiVac. So we just take the current price point that we've got at that silly level. So just on this green mark, it's just roughly there, isn't it? I'm just going to move this up slightly just to give you a bit of an idea of where this could potentially go in terms of advancing the potential gains on this. So that previous all-time high just sat there around 2.9 cents, just about 3 cents nearly. It's 2,900% gain from the current price point to up there. That's why I'm holding it. Okay, so I was buying MTV at like 1 cent or something, so I'm not going to make gigantic amounts of money off this based on the amount that I hold. But the point being is there's opportunity there. If the marketing kicks back in when supposedly they're continuing their development right now, they're talking to strategic partnerships, whatever that means. I mean, I haven't seen any announcements about that side of stuff for a long time. And yes, it is a quiet momentum. If companies have liquidity and the ability to hold staff who arguably, like I had done in the past, been working on a multitude of different projects or different companies and doing that as a side project, there's no incentive or need as such for employees of that particular chain to go, oh, I'm going to stick around, I'm not getting paid, blah, blah, blah. They might get an incremental value out of something, or they're just there to help as time goes by and just see it as a project. If that does swing around, the marketing switches around and we get back to that 2.9 cents, I'm not going to be too disappointed. And beyond that, potentially. But there's going to be two drivers to that. There's going to be the marketing/retail investor influencer side of things, which is what happened in 2021 around MultiVac. Considering there wasn't really much going on, it's quite surprising that amount of gain occurred from pretty much prices that we're at roughly right now, to be honest. They weren't too much too off the ball on around that early 2021 mark. So that's really interesting. And of course, the other side is the development, the utilization of MultiVac as a project and as a company. And that yet remains to be seen. But those two contributing factors are what could bring it back up and maybe potentially beyond that. Whether or not it actually survives beyond there as a project and company is yet remains to be seen. And this is one thing I wanted to get out of this topical video, is that emphasis around what projects are risk associated. I feel like this is quite high risk, but maybe potentially high reward in that instance. And that's how I portray it, which is why I'm not putting too much capital or risk into it, but seeing that there's potential opportunity in those two channels or pillars that we mentioned. But also to sort of engage with the fact that a lot of projects out there, I'm not saying this is a meme coin obviously, but a lot of projects out there are just very much riding the waves right now and trying to survive, to keep that name alive, even if it's not communicating or anything like that. Just do what they can so that it's ready for when that market switches around. So when the networks do increase, and I did say that a lot of the chains have evolved and adapted to accommodate this anyway, increasing the ability of their chains to hold more transactions per second, more network capacity, which is what MultiVac had a big part of that behind it around the sharding aspects. If you don't know what I mean, we've got a good intro video to MultiVac, which I'll leave at the end of this one. It could be just a minute possibility still that this kind of project and technology could have a place as more and more people come into the crypto space. We've seen the news the last few weeks, around Visa, PayPal, CBDCs, stablecoins, all this stuff. More and more people than ever before are coming into space, whether it's about investment or not, or actually utilizing things in the real world that utilize the chain's technology, may require something like this as an add-on in a really quick instance. Like, oh wow, we didn't anticipate this. We need something solution-wise to come in and help us scale. MultiVac could tick that box. That is totally hypothetical point, but a valid one. And that's when, as an investor or someone that manages the risk or looks at a risk assessment of a project and a token, the utilization, the real world asset formats, etc., I see two sides of the coin. Again, I'll reiterate, I find it unacceptable, the lack of communication, this, that, and the other, but technologically on paper, it looks really interesting. So that's why I totally put it in my pile of not necessarily a fun bag. It's more just like, okay, there's potential here if it ticks the boxes in these coming years, but it's a high risk. That's all I can say about it, really, to be honest, guys. And people ask for an update. There isn't really much to talk about update-wise. I mean, Medium is a good channel to go on for them. They do monthly updates on what's going on. The last update in August 31st, I think it was around an airdrop and building their team, expanding the team, and looking for strategic partnerships. I was like, well, hang on a minute. What we've been doing in the last 4 or 5 years, surely partnerships should already be there and growing. But it is what it is, right? So again, pinch of salt in all areas of MultiVac, in my opinion. I'm not writing it off. I hold it. Even if I sold it, I would still talk about it because I know a lot of you hold it out there as well, and you ask me the questions. So whether I hold a project or not, I'm always trying to do the educational piece on anything out there DeFi crypto related, and this is no different. It's just that I have a holding of it that makes it more intricate detail, in the sense that I feel your pain out there, guys, that lack of information. And I've tried to communicate on multitude of different channels with MultiVac representatives and employees, even the proper official channels, communication channels, emails, etc. Nothing comes back. So it's really disappointing still on that sense of things, but it is what it is, and I don't get emotional about it. The crypto space is so unique. There are thousands upon thousands of projects that just won't make it, and I'm not saying whether MultiVac will or won't make it at this moment in time, but it's going to be an interesting ride regardless, in my opinion, and that's where I'm sat with it at the moment. That's my honest feeling and thoughts about it. From the price point perspective, we just mentioned about the gains opportunity. There is good trading on a daily basis and a regular basis, particularly those that kind of like to chop those trades in and out every now and then and just ride those waves, really. And even in this instance, it's quite interesting when you deep dive into it. So 0.0007, just up to this point here, in the space of, this was back in December, by the way, but in that 2-month period, it's a good 100% gains. So yeah, there's definitely an orientation that, just because I'm a long-term holder, I look at things a bit differently. But from a short-term perspective, if you are a regular trader, I'm going to pull this across, just make sure I get it roughly accurate to where it was. I think there's one bouncing around here just based on the lower levels, so I just move it down slightly. Let's give a bit of a better indication as to where the movements are occurring. So you can see here, back in June, we had this drop down here and then all the way up here, and it couldn't quite hit this fib level up here. And from a macro level, which I can probably just adjust slightly to one of the lows and one of the highest points, again, it kind of reflects that area as well. And you can see there's quite a few, I wouldn't call it volatility, I just think there's a lot of resistance at that particular area at 0.001. So that's a good little target for us to consider in the short term anyway. As we see some reflective patterns based on a couple of announcements that come up here and there, usually also releases from staking and so on and so forth, where people take opportunity of that, and then the sell-offs and so on and so forth, and just general market orientation of what goes on, macro events, the market in general for Bitcoin's movements and so on and so forth do affect these as well. But the point being at this moment in time is that you can clearly see some traction, and this is what we drew in the last video back, this orientation around May 2022, that this is going to be an interesting area. Why? Because historically we look at this huge resistance here, and obviously back in 2021 March time it shot straight through that and it came back, but we said this would be a momentous area because of the lack of data at those current price points. So that's talking about 0.001, so we're still relatively far off that at the moment. But you can see along that channel and journey has been a really interesting magnetic area of price point. So even just thinking about that out loud, when we're reflecting between this current area that we're sort of near enough floating around this area between this 0.001 and 0.0013, huge jump there, guys. But irrespective of that, and it sounds ridiculously silly, but still good 30-40% drive up there. So as I said, from a short-term trading perspective, it is quite interesting. If you're accumulating MTV from the first time, we've obviously had this downward trend, so obviously we're hitting again those areas of interest that we see across the board. Again, on the macro fib level here, you can see from one of the lower points and one of the most recent higher points, with the exception of this one up here, it is matching quite nicely with the fact that this area that's coming into is of interest for a potential accumulation pickup. The RSIs on the bottom left, 14-day 33, 28-day 41. This is a good bite point for me personally if I was to be adding more. That's not suggesting that you should or shouldn't, but that's what I would be doing if I was adding more MTV to my bags. And with the assumption that, of course, there is opportunity at lower areas, but this is where you define, are you a long-term holder or short-term? If you're a long-term holder, it's not really going to make a huge difference if you're buying here or down here, to be honest. But if you're a short-term trader, whether that's daily or weekly, in some occasions monthly, it makes a huge difference. So you see these little swing arounds can contribute a lot of factors depending on how much capital you're sticking in. So there is opportunity here still with MultiVac, despite the lack of communication, the weird strangeness about it. There is opportunity as investors, and with just a stint in our eyes of the near future, that it could potentially swing around and actually have some proper utilization and partnerships in the next year or two. I truly believe the next bull cycle will be in that 2024, 2025 period, not just from historic data, but a lot of switch-ons going on around the world, particularly in the financial industry and the adoption of cryptocurrencies or the technology behind it. This could swing it around. Reiterating the points earlier, the marketing drive and potential utility drive. There's a lot of influencers out there and a lot of people on social media and obviously bots, etc., that can really push a project if they want to. And it's around that momentum to keep the driving. And a lot of people don't even look at what the project actually does. They just see the narratives. They see the constant reminders of a project and they just jump in because I don't want to miss out. So if you're new to MTV or a previous user or holder of MTV, just be aware, guys. Just be constantly aware of everything. And always, if you're in the mindset of yes or no, is have a balanced thought process around all of this. As I said, I personally think it is a risk project at the moment for me personally in my portfolio, but others may see this differently. And you have to draw your own conclusion. I'm not an advisor, but I just reflect what I think. So guys, that pretty much wraps up MultiVac. I'm sorry there's not much more I can talk about. That's not my fault. Push that onto MultiVac if you want to. But hopefully maybe one day they will respond to me and we'll get some more interesting information out of them. But I think more so on this point was a bit of an update on the price side of things and the opportunity there. And the pillars behind it, which could contribute to it getting back to the previous all-time high level and potentially beyond that as well. It's going to be really interesting either way. But guys, thanks for watching this one. We'll have a few more update videos. I've got a couple of interview videos being recorded over the last couple of days, including today. So we'll get those out as soon as possible. But we will see you hopefully very soon in the next MultiVac update video. Take care. Bye-bye.